about the difference between the birur of Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar versus Shlomo HaMelech. We said that there's two psukim that say Kuma Hashem. David HaMelech said Kuma Hashem libnu chasecha, referring to the Beis HaMikdash, which will ultimately really be Shlomo, his son. Rise up Hashem for your peace. Moshe said Kuma Hashem Vayanusu misanecha, right, that your enemies will flee. Scatter your enemies.
What's David referring to?
Vayafutzu oivecha vayanusu misanecha. David also was talking about the Beis HaMikdash. He made the plans for it.
Since our enemies, he also means our enemies, really?
Yeah, Moshe?
We're under...
They were his enemies too.
Yeah. Everyone's enemies.
But yeah, he's talking about for old times.
When David talks about Korbanos and Minchais and Ayla, is that like referring to what he hopes will happen next, or what happened before, like...
Let's just... Yeah?
Different question.
Yeah.
Asking out of class.
So the main emphasis of what we're talking about, Moshe's conquest of the sparks. The Rabbi said, "Vayafutu oivecha vayanusu misanecha," right? That in the words itself, you can already see there's a lot of diukim in those words. The fact that there's oivecha misanecha, that there's enemies and foes, means that he had to go into the land of the enemy, which means his birur was not in a way of peace, but in a way of war. Right? Ultimately, this is called Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, this mimer. So we're saying my soul is redeemed in peace, and we're learning that there's different ways of doing biruri. And Moshe in the Midbar did not do the full level of Pada B'Shalom Nafshi at all.
Birurim is redemption?
Birurim is refinement. The refining the sparks. So where do we see that? Because he had to go, he wasn't doing it in peace, he was doing it in a way of war. Where he was going in the place of the enemy. Just like a king who has to go fight a battle, he goes into the enemy's terrain. So too Moshe had to go into the Midbar where there was Nachashim, Srafim, and Akrabim. Right? Snakes and scorpions. But Shlomo, on the other hand, he was able to stay in his place, and all the sparks came to him. So that's the inyan of the diuk of the pasuk oivecha misanecha. There's enemies and foes, which means it was in a way of war. But there's also the diuk that vayafutsu and vayanusu, which means that the enemies and foes were scattered and fled. So the fact that they were scattered and fled is also a diuk the Rabbi makes. He says that not only was the manner of the refinement different, one was war and one was peace, but the effect and the power of the refinement was totally different. Because the fact that we see that the enemies scattered and fled does not mean that they were destroyed.
Right.
They just were scattered and fled. Right? Which means they still existed, but they were in a state of hiding and being out of the subdued. And so that means that the power that Moshe was bringing was not sufficient to completely undo and eliminate the whole existence of the klippas. Whereas when it comes to Shlomo, where we find that he brought a much higher level of light, that there really were no enemies anymore. When he was finished with them, the world was at peace. Shalom b'sheket haya b'yamav. There was total peace in his days, which means he was able to completely undo the enemy. And so why is that? Because we started talking more about the specific levels of spheros and so forth. That we said that there's essentially three levels. There's something called tzedakah, where when you give tzedakah, you meet the needs of the poor, but you don't make them rich. And who's the poor? Malchus, which is the idea of the energy which is shaykh to the worlds, right? So when she's poor, it means the world is, so to speak, in exile. And when you replenish her poverty, then this is the inyan of what we ultimately said you put back into her 5 partsufim, if you recall.
Right. Yeah.
Nukfa, Za, Chochma, Bina, and Keser, but the lower part of Keser. Even the lower part of Keser is still shaykh to the worlds. So that's what Moshe essentially was bringing to the table. Even though he's coming with the ark and so forth, he had serious powers there. What he says in this mimer is that it was just the chetzonius of Keser, and therefore the enemies were not able to be completely eliminated. Why? Right. Because in chetzonius of Keser, there is place for the worlds inside of that level of godliness. Right? Even though it's Keser, which is beyond the worlds, but it's the lower part of Keser which maintains the source and the place for the worlds in it. And so if Moshe is bringing the level of Chitzonius HaKeser, which has in it the recognition of the world, it can't simultaneously be recognizing the world and giving the world the power to exist and nullify it at the same exact time. You can't support someone's existence and be responsible for someone's existence and be the tool of the negation of their existence simultaneously. Since it recognizes worlds, that level of divinity, it can't undo worlds. Where then you have the level of Shlomo, who's the idea of Panemius of Keser. He represents Attik, which is essentially not called filling the needs, but wealth, becoming wealthy. Wealth is not something which is relevant to the world, right? The world is able to sustain itself and have everything it needs, but to be wealthy means something, give Malchus something which is beyond her boundaries, so you never anticipated.
Attik with Aiyn?
Yeah. And that, therefore, he brings a level which doesn't even recognize the world, it precedes the world. When you bring a level of godly life into the world which precedes the world and doesn't recognize the world, it has the power to completely mavatal the klippas and the negative, the whole world itself, actually, right? Because it's not busy protecting and preserving the boundaries of the world. It doesn't even know from the boundaries of the world. It's a level which is beyond the boundaries of the world. Therefore, the power of the birur, of the refinement that can take place through this light, is a total elimination of anything opposing godliness.
Does it also eliminate the world?
Not the world entirely, obviously, but it eliminates, so to speak, anything. Olam milashon helam. Put it like that. Olam milashon helam. Right. In other words, it eliminates the world, anything that's a concealment of God. So in that sense, it eliminates all the worlds, because the word world literally comes from the word concealment. It leaves inside the world everything godly. It makes a world which has no more concealment.
Is Klipat Noga considered godly?
So it raises up Klippas Noga to be total Kedusha. Right? No, Klippas Noga is not in itself godly. It's also Klippas. Which means when this light is in there, there's no more Klippas Noga. In other words, it's like a state of Shabbos. That's why it's called Menucha. Kuma Hashem li Menucha Secha. So the world was at a state of pretty much total Geula. We're going to see that, why wasn't it the ultimate Geula? There was something lacking there even. And what was lacking there, so just sort of to put us right back on track, is that there's something called tzedakah, there's something called wealth,
Right.
but then there's also something called chesed,
Right.
which means chesed you can give to poor and rich equally. What's called gemlus chasadim, when you just give, it's relevant to even give a rich person, which means that a rich person himself can even receive something higher than him, which means there's a level beyond Shlomo who was rich. Right, and therefore it was not the ultimate, even though it pretty much looked like perfection on earth.
3 levels as well, Chesed?
No, just one level of chesed. But chesed gives to the rich and poor, which means it has something beyond Attik. Right? If Attik is rich, you can give to the rich. That's where Mashiach comes
When
in.
you're saying Attik, what's the definition in English in this context?
Top part of Kesed.
Ancient, old.
Yeah, it means actually the word Attik means to remove something. Ne'atak means to be totally disconnected. So it refers to this level of godliness which is completely disconnected from anything have to do with the worlds. Yeah, Ariel.
Is it about Arich? It doesn't. You're saying that it, on some level it recognizes the worlds. It recognizes the worlds, or the passive, but like the in potential, or is it in potential, or
I mean, it's beyond the worlds, but it has the whole potential world inside of it. So even when the worlds exist, they have a certain connection and relationship with Arich.
Why does Mashiach come in at the level of Chesed? Chesed.
Because we're saying that, remember we talked about the Indian of Chasidecha Yivarachucha, right? That there's a certain level of Hamshacha into Malchus, Chasidecha, which is the Chesed, Yivarachu Ko, we said. He can bless Malchus. Malchus is Ko. So Dafka, what's the blessing? We said that it's shaykh to what comes before it. Yoducha Hashem kol maasecha. All of your deeds, maasecha, yoducha, which means they're able to, the Indian of hodah. Hodah is beyond comprehension. Thanksgiving means you don't understand it, you just praise it. So this level of praise, which is beyond comprehension, which represents the light beyond the Seder Ishtalshlus, the chasidecha can yivarachucha. The chasid can not only praise it, but he can even draw it down, which are two opposites. Something which is, this is going back to previous parts of the Maimer, but something which is so high, which cannot be understood, usually cannot be drawn down with a bracha. It can only be prayed for. But the chassid can take such a high level, which is beyond comprehension, and also mivarech, which means to command it to come down. And we said on the ultimate level, he does this at the level of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who doesn't even have to even really make a bracha. He just learns Torah and even doesn't even learn Torah having anything to do with the topic he's trying to, like he made it rain by just saying a pasuk, Hini matuv manai.
Why?
We're going to get to that, but that's he's the ultimate chassid, right? So he represents the level, the power of chesed to bring from the highest levels down and to malchus, and not by way of praying, but by way of not even blessing or commanding, just by saying Torah.
I'm curious, what, like, that level of Shalom Melech, that, like, there's no more klipas, no goes, only godliness in it. What does that, like, look like?
Shabbos.
Like, just people praying?
Shabbos, there's no more, no, not necessarily only praying.
Like, people just learning, or like?
Not learning,
Like,
no, in other words, no more klipas, no goes also on Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
So eating on Shabbos, you can do a lot of things on Shabbos, It's just, the point is that everything is in the realm of Kedusha. There's no more chol,
Okay.
right? So basically...
Like a normal day would look like just like...
Yeah, I mean, even if it's a normal day, but it's everybody's avoda was completely l'shem shamayim.
Okay.
It was 40 years of actual peace on earth. There was no war on the whole earth. There was no more separation and disconnect from Hashem. There was so much godly light that in everybody's daily activities, it was all about Hashem. What else is it going to be about? Like Hashem was in the world.
Washing dishes just like Hashem.
Yeah, they were just in a state of total glory of God every second, the whole world.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Right, like you wash dishes on Shabbos, right? But your mom had Shabbos.
Arich is Aiyn also?
No, Arich was an olive. Let's go inside.
Okay.
That's where we like to be. 3 lines from the bottom of the previous page, if you have that one. I have 2 copies of it. 3. You get it? Anyone? Just gonna wrap up the previous page there. Kevin Shagam. Well, you need.
I have 2 copies.
Oh, okay. Kevin Shagam Birur Zeh. We're talking about the bittul of Moshe, which did not really eliminate the enemy. It just subdued it, because Kevin Shagam Birur Zeh Hu b'derech milamay lamata v'lo b'derech hislabshus. So this is an interesting point here. It's because even Moshe Rabbeinu's way of refining, it wasn't totally from below to above. It was still what we call from above to below. We called it, to add in another segment over here from before, we called it nigla of Torah. Right? There was really 3 levels. There was davening, nigla, and chasidus. And each one refines in a different way. Davening is when you go mamish face to face with your enemy in such a way that you enclose yourself into him and actually do battle with him, like manu y manu.
He said boots on ground.
Boots on the ground. Whereas Moshe, even though he went into the camp of the enemy, he went into the desert, he didn't actually fight with the snakes and scorpions. He just brought the ark there and they all got nullified from themselves. So that's we said, that was nigla of Torah, learning halachas, learning the stories of the Torah, where just by discussing the cow in the field, you refine the cow in the field. You don't have to go and shecht it and make tefillin out of it or whatever it might
Would
be.
you say that would be the effect of Shlomo, but...
No, that's the effect of
going
Moshe.
out?
But it's the effect of Moshe. Let's not confuse ourselves,
But
right?
the breaking
No,
out
but
is
this is
for
the
the
effect of Moshe, right? Shlomo doesn't even go into the land of the enemy, right? So Moshe goes into the land of the enemy, which is an Indian of war, but it's not total. He slapshoots into the enemy. He doesn't get fighting with the enemy. That's called davening, and therefore he actually loses the power on both ends. It's not a full-on above to below, which means he just brings so much light that he just shines the life force right out of the klippas. But it's also not mamish from below to above, where he's able to go into and conquer the enemy by sort of transforming the enemy through prayer. So he lacks both levels, basically. Because if you go into prayer, when you get deep into the enemy, it's like your godly soul going and climbing into your animal soul and refining it from within. You can also do a total transformation at that level. In davening, you can transform your animal soul to a godly entity because you go climbing into his own space and you basically make him think differently. Or so Moshe didn't even get to that. Like so prayer seemingly is higher than Torah learning at this level. Because Torah learning, you can subdue the enemy automatically, but you can't ever really get rid of him. So since Moshe was still a level of above to below, he was still not really climbing in, but he didn't get to a level of his slavshus where he entered into their boundaries, mamish, and was able to change their minds from within. Therefore, habitul sha'idei gili orzeh, the revelation through this level, eino bitul b'tachlis. It does not create a true bitul in the enemy. It just makes him go away, vayafutsu, vayanusu, scattering, fleeing, but not bitul. L'chein gam achrei habirur, therefore, turning the page, after the revelation, the refinement, nishar adayin behelam, it remained, at least in some concealed way, mitzias demenagid, the existence of an opponent. Oivecha, mesanecha, these levels of enemies and foes, they were still there. Elish makom makom, but nonetheless, kevan shatachtun enu be'erech, since those snakes and scorpions are in no way comparable to the light of the Aron HaKodesh, gam lagabi giloi zeh, even compared to this revelation, sheyesh lo tefisas makom lagabe, where there's still some level of comparison to the light that's coming in, to that of the worlds that they're trying to negate. But nonetheless, it's such a high light. L'chein gam aydei giloi zeh mizbatla tokif da tachton. So even though they're still not being eliminated, there's still a tremendous level of birur. It nullifies the power of the tachton. They're no longer scary snakes and scorpions. They're subdued snakes and scorpions, which have disappeared and hiding under the rocks. What's that? Temporarily.
So prayer is low to high or high to low?
Prayer would be from low to high.
Low to high. And Torah is
And we can say that
low.
Torah's high to low, but there's two levels of it. What's that?
we can say that tefillah eliminates the.
It could.
It could.
But that's warfare.
Right.
You're not going to just.
You're
In
not
other
just
words,
going to get rid of the.
whereas when you learn, every time you learn, you mamish refine the world without even touching it. Like it's a winner every time.
Permanently.
Davening is dangerous. You're going to war. There's a very good chance you're not going to totally transform your nefesh bahamas. In other words, on the one hand, it's lower than Torah, but it has the power. If you win the war, it means you get your nefesh bahamas completely on your side. I mean, I don't know anyone who's really accomplishing that too much in their davening, but it could happen, and it's a good way to make it happen. As your mamish, when you go to battle, though, you got to win. Because if you go to battle and you're fighting and getting bloody and your mamish there sword to sword, either you win or you lose. In other words, when you stay back at home and you learn Torah, you have it has an effect. It's positive every time. Anyway, so what he's saying here, I was reading last night another Maimer Pada B'Shalom Nasha from the Mittler Rebbe, and he kind of brings this whole thing just into a more, down to earth. He says that what is it like that you subdue your enemies, but they're still there? He's saying that these are different levels of your own will. You can have a will for the taivas of this world, right? And you desire them, but you can fight with that will by bringing a stronger will for taivas for kedusha, right? And you can just like take over and move in, and you create inside yourself a will presently for you pull yourself away from whatever shtus you were doing, and you like do something good. And it could be that it's so mighty that it really can send that lower will into hiding, and for quite some long time. It could be for like 613 days even. It could be for a long time that you just push this lower will back. But the fact is, since you're only playing with one will versus another will, it's going to be in there. Just because you've championed that will with a new will doesn't mean you completely uprooted that will. As soon as, God forbid, this new will fade, that other will is just totally standing there ready to come back. You haven't done anything to it. You've just sort of overshadowed it.
This is the Aiyn Shlomo.
This is the Indian of Moshe, right? He makes the enemies hide. But they don't really go away. But it does take away their strength, at least temporarily. But they don't really go away.
I thought Moshe wasn't in the battle.
It's a shame.
But he goes into the land of the enemy, right?
So how do you transform that?
Yeah, that's the
So
question.
so Shlomo already goes to a higher level where he brings from a state which it was basically able to nullify that will, like to the point where it's what he says in this mimer. I don't want to mix us up too much, but it is mamash a parallel. I mean, this mimer is obviously based on that one, where he says like, imagine if you brought so much will for kedusha, like from Attik, you're just like Shlomo HaMelech, you're going to build the Beis HaMikdash. I mean, that's a tremendous will. You're hiring every worker in the whole like Middle East to mamash build the building of gold and silver wasn't even worth anything in those days. I mean, your whole production crew has just gone full time into, kedusha.
Yeah.
He says you nullify that negative will like a drop in the ocean.
So why did they come to Shlomo?
So at that level, there's really, again, he ultimately winds up saying that there's more to go. Because even it's possible that you'll take away the ocean. And you'll wind up with that little drop left. In other words, that also doesn't really totally remove it. But at the same time, it is batal b'metzias. It is at full-on nullity because it's basically incapable. It's not easy to take away an ocean. There's some like crazy act of God has to happen to remove the ocean and leave that drop. So it's essentially a complete elimination.
That's what happened.
Didn't it happen in the end?
Huh? It did happen. Shlomo sinned, Shlomo erred, whatever. It was an act of God. But anyway, we're saying there's a further level. There is the full and complete, elimination, which is we didn't get to it yet.
So why did they come to Shlomo? Not to battle, but what, to get some good, some kedusha?
They came to nullify themselves, to give them their wives and marry into the family of Jews.
Daughters.
So there was no battle anymore.
Their daughters, yeah.
It'd be a different story.
No, there was no battle. Shlomo did not fight any wars
So
with
they
anybody.
wanted to join up.
They came to join up. All right, so let's go on.
Oh, so then it is your will, like power of the will. Like just push the kedusha as hard as you can. Like that's how you transform it? Like
Certainly up till everything we said now.
Right.
Right? V'yisnagdu shelo, right, third line from the top, the opposition of the oivecha misanecha, right, of these enemies. Okay, they're misnagdu, they didn't disappear, but they're in an ofen of yafutzu v'yanusu. They basically have gone and fled, even when it comes to nigla. So they're not really bothering anybody so long as you can bring that aron with you. Masha'ain came ba'abira b'derech manucha, but not so when it comes to Shlomo, when you're refining by way of peace. This is the higher one who's called the refiner. Hu b'makomo, he stays right in this place in Yerushalayim. Ve'enu yored l'makomo shel hatachton. He never comes down and enters into the realm of the lower one. He doesn't go into the midbar. Hu lefisha tachton eino tofes makam lagabe. You know why he doesn't go into the midbar? He doesn't even recognize there's a midbar. He comes from Attik. He never even heard of a midbar. And it's because he never heard of a midbar that he doesn't even have to deal with it, and it has to deal with him. It comes running to him because he sort of like negated it from existence, and the effect of him negating it from his own existence negates itself from existence.
It's not a midbar anymore.
Yeah, it goes ois midbar. It stops being a klippa because he brings a light which doesn't even recognize its existence. Again, if you recognize its existence, you're preserving its existence, and therefore you can't eliminate it.
Wow.
He comes with a light which doesn't recognize its existence, and therefore undoes its existence. And how does he do it? By bringing a light which is beyond creation altogether.
This is Shlomo.
Yes, this is Shlomo.
And his light is coming from Attik.
Yep. Habitul da tachton hu bitul b'tachlis. Therefore, the bitul that takes place in the lower realms is a complete bitul, an elimination. Like what we were saying is a drop in the ocean. It's gone. Right? It's not even in the realm of, bitul b'shishim, bitul b'meya, bitul b'masayim. It's bitul in an infinite amount, right? An ocean.
Is that saying the klippas themselves aren't even bad? It's just how we relate to them? Just if we relate to them? If we don't even think about
The
them?
klippas themselves stop being klippas. They come and join you as friends. You're not at war, right? And they're not even hidden enemies, right? They're just like, they come and they give you their daughters, and they say, please, convert us.
Right.
That's what happened in Shlomo's days. He married 1,000 wives, not because of his lust, because all these nations wanted to become part of the Jewish nation, right?
But could you say that became his battle?
Yeah. In other words, there was some issue there. His taiva for converting the world to Judaism was so great that in a certain sense he was blind to the reality that one little part of the world, the Mitzrayim, weren't ready for it, and they were sort of dancing at two weddings there.
Are the klipot an extension of the anafsana? Or are they tools for the Yitzhar or whatever?
I'm not sure.
So, Rabbi, so do you think
An
he should have...
extension, or
I'm not sure how to answer that. The klippa, they all come from the same place. They're basically a separation from God. Sometimes the nefesh Bahamas, sometimes the klippa, sometimes the evil angel. They're all the same level of disconnect. It's called helim, right? Concealment of God. They don't feel themselves to be one with God, therefore they act opposing God.
So in order to avoid this oversight, do you think he should have...
I don't have any advice for Shlomo.
done his research?
And he didn't ask me yet. And
Well, next time, like...
I don't know. I don't know. If it happens, listen. I'll talk to you. V'yesh Shlomo ba'omek Yosef. So we could say in a deeper way. Here we go. V'gam kashabiru ba'ofen shamavaru mekomo. We're going there, right? That even when the refinement is in such a way that the refiner stays in his place, like Shlomo, elashu b'darga kazu, but he's in a elashu b'darga kazu, but he's in such a level sha'misbarer yesh lo tefisas makom lagabe, right? But the one who's being refined still has some place in his mind.
How you like translate tefisas makom?
He holds place. In other words, he recognizes his existence.
But like contextually, like in regards to like his.
He recognizes them. In other words, they have room in him. In other words, put it like this: it's like, imagine like a tzaddik she'eino gomer, for an example, right? Where we're saying that a Beinoni already, he mamish has a place for the nefesh bahamis, because he's fighting with it every single second. So that certainly takes up place in his mind. He certainly recognizes its existence. But a tzaddik she'eino gomer, he already has completely nullified his Yetzer Hara. It's bitul b'shishim, bitul b'matayim, right? Yeah. Which means it doesn't have a voice and an opinion. Only Yetzer Tov Shof, he's only judged by his Yetzer Tov, but he still has evil midos inside in some minute degree which do not mess up the soup, right? They don't make it treif. But there's a tefisas makom inside of him. There's place, literally it takes up place in some, and therefore it says he doesn't hate evil with the tachlis of hatred, because he still has a drop of evil inside of him. So therefore, it's the same exact idea. He can't completely nullify the bad when he's still sitting on some bad.
Right.
It's a placeholder?
It takes up place. That's why it's not like there's no. It's hard to put the actual words into the context of what it means, but it's exactly what it says.
It's concepts. Right?
It's exactly what it says. It takes up place in him. The world still has some place inside of. Part of him is still the world. So how's he going to undo the world when he has some of the world inside of him? So now it makes sense when you have none of the world inside of you. You're a perfect tzaddik. Therefore, you're not held back by the limitations of the world. You can nullify the world, right?
Ignorance is bliss. How you say? It's a true statement.
I don't know what you mean here in this context. I mean, ignorance meaning you have some of the evil inside.
No, ignorance is sin. You're ignorant. You don't know. You don't know about it.
So you have some of the evil inside?
No, you have no idea what it is.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
There wouldn't be tefisas
yesterday about the
makom.
point.
What?
What's that?
You wouldn't have tefisas makom because tefisas makom is like what's connected to the evil thing. If you didn't have that,
placeholder,
you're ignorant.
Maybe. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there.
Ignorance is bliss.
it's the opposite.
No, he's saying about the tzaddik gomer. If you're ignorant from the whole notion of evil, you create bliss.
Right.
It's a funny translation, but it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
so what we're saying here is we're kind of taking it to the next level.
Are we talking about like Shlomo's like himself? There was tefisas makom because in Moshe himself there wasn't tefisas
Right.
makom.
No,
But
no,
in Moshe's
Moshe,
activity,
there totally was a tefisas makom.
No, but in Moshe's activity there was tefisas makom. But Moshe was like supposed to be the most tzaddik gomer that ever happened.
Okay, but still,
Yeah, but I don't want
he
tefisas makom
represents
though.
the Indian of tefisas makom here, right?
In this, yeah.
The fact that he had to go into the desert certainly meant that he recognized the desert.
But that was him, and not just his avodah.
Okay, but it was also him. In other words, the Moshe Rabbeinu and Shlomo were the same person ultimately, right? What happened from the time of Moshe to Shlomo he got a little bit sharper, a little bit brighter. In other words, even Moshe Rabbeinu had the potential of being Shlomo inside of him, but he was busy still dealing with his present avoda.
But
Right.
I thought Moshe was supposed to be the thing that we compare all things to.
Right.
He is, but in other words, his existence spans all time. So at a
Right.
certain point, there's still levels where Moshe was in the desert. Eventually, when Moshe went into Eretz Yisrael, he sort of revealed that aspect. If you want to say that Moshe had the potential of Shlomo inside of him while he was in the desert, I have no problem saying that. But it was only in a state of potential.
Even though it was like a different Gilgul or a different instrument with Shlomo?
But it was the same soul. In other words, in fact, you want to say that. In other words, who was Shlomo? Shlomo was Moshe Rabbeinu, just in the new and improved.
But Moshe
Right.
can't sin.
Neither can Shlomo. It's the same person.
But we talk about Moshe Shlomo having pieces makam, which would make him not a tzaddik or tovla.
Wait, hold on a second. Stop.
Yeah.
I was giving you an example of
Yeah.
tzaddik v'tovlo, so you could understand what tefisas makam was,
Right.
right? That's just an example. It doesn't mean that these people necessarily were there. I'm just saying the Nasi Adur was the same Nasi Adur from beginning to end. Moshe Rabbeinu never died. He lived in every generation.
Right.
He was just doing different activities through different times. At certain times we said, for example, at the time of Mordechai at Tzaddik, for example, we said not long ago in a class that Moshe brought out new qualities in himself that he didn't bring out when he was Moshe Rabbeinu, because he went on a Mesiras Nefesh that he was not able to tap into when he was Moshe. When he was Shlomo Melech, he brought out new qualities that he was not able to tap into when he was Moshe. He brought all the nitzosos to him. All of it is in Moshe. But not Moshe did not in that particular form, in that generation, bring out all of his qualities at the same time. That's all I'm trying to say. Of course he was a tzaddik gamur.
So the
But
pieces makam is in the mashal, or is in the application of it. It's not in the man himself.
It's both of them, though.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I'm saying that in potential, Moshe is Mashiach. Right? So until he becomes Mashiach, that true perfection of Moshe has not presented itself yet. So there is tefisas makom at some level, even in the man himself. Right? Not in the panemius, but at some level, I guess you could say, that...
I mean, that's kind of funny, no?
You're quiet.
is it?
What's that?
More
Well,
catchy.
Just takes the edge off?
What's the pieces makam?
Alright. What's tefisas makom? Takes up place.
And secondly, Baruch mentioned ignorance is bliss. So
I
that's,
don't
that works.
I don't want to go into that.
Don't go there. That's
No.
just a random comment.
So anyway, what are we saying? Let's start this paragraph over again. Yesh lom ba'omek yoser.
Yeah, it's complicated.
We could say in a deeper realm, the gam kasha birur hu ba'ofen ha'shamevaru hu b'makomo. That even when the birur happens, the refinement happens in such a way that the refiner stays in his place. Ela shehu b'darga kazu, but he's in such a level shamisbarer, that the refinee, the one that's getting refined, yesh lo tefisas makom lagabe, it still holds up place. This is a new thing. Because up until now we said if you're in your place, that means that the world doesn't take up place. If you don't go out of your, right, only if you go into the land of the enemy, the world takes up place. But here we're saying you could stay in your place and still the world could have some place by you. So in that sort of middle region, habitul damanagid eino bitul betachlis. The nullification of the enemy is not totally nullified still. Al pizeh yesh lahosef biur. Accordingly, we can add explanation. This that is implied in the mimer, we're talking about the mimer of the Rashab, is that Shlomo was a man of peace. It's because in his days, we said that it was because the moon was in its fullness. It was the 15th generation from Avram. 15 represents the full moon, 15th day of the month.
Again, please.
Moshe was called was a man of peace because in his days the moon was full. What does it mean that in his days the moon was full? From Abraham until Shlomo was 15 generations. And just like it takes 15 days for the moon to become full, so in 15 generations from Abraham, the so to speak Jewish moon became full, which means that's why he was a man of peace. The full moon represents the full gamut of revelation on earth.
Shlomo.
Yeah. Which is called ashirus, wealth, shelamayla mimile chesor, which we said wealth is more than just filling the empty pockets of the poor. That's called filling the lack. But wealth is beyond that.
Was Moshe around, 10, 11 versus 15 for Shlomo?
he was 7. Ki amisis ha'inyan de menucha v'shalom, right? Because the true level of menucha and shalom, hu kashamanaga misbato b'tachlis. It's when it is a complete elimination of the enemy, right? And in other words, not just that the moon was full, because as we know, if the moon could be full, the moon can also go down, right? So it's the fact that the moon was full. In other words, Shlomo just sort of happened into, you could say, a 15th generation where there was a full gamut of revelation, but it doesn't sort of preclude the fact that the moon could go to the 16th day when it's not full anymore. So it's true that he reached a level of wealth, but there's still a place for the fall. But but the true level of real shalom is when the menagid is completely nullified. The opponent goes away altogether. And in order to totally remove the menagid, who are the hamshachas in ashirus, and we said this requires wealth, or in social lamayla mishaychas laolamos Attik. Okay, actually I think, I'm a little bit confused here. He's basically saying that Shlomo was the wealth. Shlomo as well. He's saying that he's basically discussing Shlomo's level here. And he's saying in order to get wealth, you need Attik, because it removes the existence of the enemy. The be'ora shayach la'olamos, any light which is still relevant to the world, kolel gam ora sovev, including the light of sovev, keser, but it's still relevant to the worlds because we're talking about the external aspect of keser here. Kevan she'or zeh nosen makom la'olamos, since this light gives room to the worlds, right? And worlds, olam, milashon helam vehester. The word olam means concealment. The nullification of the opponents of the world through this light, eino bitu b'tachlis. This is basically what Moshe is, right? That it's a level of keser, but it's a shaykh to the world. So even though it nullifies the world, it's not ultimately nullified. This that Shlomo was a man of peace. Because he brought down Attik, Ashirus. Sorry, we didn't go into the next level yet. This is just a conclusion of the previous level.
How Shlomo got to where he was.
Yeah, how true wealth, which is the undoing of the enemy entirely, comes from Attik, a level beyond the worlds. Nothing actually new in that paragraph. It's just the things that we had. Why does he say to go deeper? Because we had already actually explained those things outside before we got there. So it was not deeper for us. Okay, but now we go deeper. Mamshik ba'amayim. Now the reminder goes on. The inyan chesed. Finally, the chesed. We never got to chesed yet. We only got to tzedakah and then being wealthy. But we don't know what it means to give to the wealth. Inyan chesed hu lamayla gam ashirus. It's higher than wealth. Shlechein gmilus chasadim higam la'ashirim. And that's why, as we said, you can give chesed even to the wealthy. So there's something for them to receive. We said that what does it mean to give to the wealthy? Though it's not just giving them more wealth, because if they can actually use more wealth, it means their wealth was not perfect to begin with. It's giving them like another scale of wealth entirely, to go from a millionaire to a trillionaire.
Give him a talking bird.
Right. Hu agilu dilasi lavo, and this represents the revelation of the future. Hu naili yoser gam megilu shabiyamei Shlomo, and this is even higher than what happened in the days of Shlomo. Tamshach shabiyamei Shlomo, this that came down in the days of Shlomo, haisam bechinas Attik, as we said, and we've been saying, this is from the level of Attik, penimius of Keser. But asi lavo in the future ti amshach bechinas penimius Attik. But in the future, we haven't even heard of such a thing yet. In the future, it's going to be not just from penimius of Keser, which is Attik, but the penimius of Attik itself, which is another way of saying the penimius of Keser. Hainu Aiyn Sof sheberad la. So here's a new term. It's called the Aiyn Sof, not the Aiyn Sof, but the Aiyn Sof sheberad la. What's rad la? Anybody knows? Reisha Delo Isyada. It means the unknowable head.
What? What's going on?
Yes. The penimius of Attik, right, which is beyond penimius of Keser. Penimius of Keser is Attik. Penimius of Attik is called the unknowable head. And by the way, this is the word that started the kuntras of in Yonu Shel Torah Chassidus that I keep talking about, he begins off by saying the Chassidus comes from Radla, right, from the unknowable head. But he doesn't explain over there what Radla is, because he just gave this mimer that we're learning before he gave that. So at some point, I don't know if we're going to do it before Hanukkah or after Hanukkah, but at some point I want to go into that kuntris, but you have to know what Radla is.
Is it Isyada?
Isyada. And it's helpful if you can actually keep this idea in your head until such time that we do learn that Sikha. But this is the Penimius of Attik.
The unknowable head, right?
The unknowable, not noble, unknowable head. So Iker Inyan the Attik. And so, sometimes there's a lot of times you throw around the word Attik in different Maimorim. Right? There's something called Attik Yomin, Attik, right? And different inyanim. So he says that when the Iker Inyan of Attik, the most pristine, essential level of Attik is this part. This level called the unknowable head. So whereas the Penimius Attik is really the true Attik. And we have to clarify what it says in the Zohar, be'edrezuta. Hai Atika, where it says this Attik, ishtachach patlas reishin. It says this level called Attik is actually found in 3 heads. Uperush, Rabbi Chaim Vital, right, this, the student of the Ari, explains in his Bir of the Edrezuta, she'ikar Atika hu ha'Aiyn Sof, that the real Attik is nothing other than the Aiyn Sof itself. In other words, there's the Aiyn Sof, there's the Aiyn Sof, right? So he wants to say that Attik is actually the Aiyn Sof, the essence of Hashem.
That seems different than what you said. Is it not?
Can you
Where do
just
we say
that in
something
English?
different?
No, just above that refers to that the Iker of Attik being Bardula,
Regular.
the lineup.
Radla.
Yeah, Radla.
And why? We said Hainu Aiyn Sof.
Wait, I thought you said that Aiyn Sof was different than Radla. Like,
Aiyn Sof Shebir Radla. We said, read the words there. It says the
Right.
Aiyn Sof that's inside of the unknowable head.
When you say Attik now,
How does that work?
Where are we in the whole map? Please.
Keser
Yeah.
is Arich and Attik, and this is Penimius of Attik. It's inner, deeper than Attik, than the regular Attik that we've been discussing of Shlomo.
Aiyn Sof Shebe Radla.
Reish Delo Isyad is the unknowable head. This is the Aiyn Sof inside of it. Right?
What?
How can the Aiyn Sof
So
be
we
Aiyn
top,
Sof?
or are we at the top now?
So it
Like,
has to be.
So you have questions, you're saying? So let's see. But meanwhile, we're saying that the Reb Chaim Vital states that the Iker of Attik is the Aiyn Sof itself, right? V'al Shem. So what do we say? Let's go back. There's the Attik it says the Zohar is found in 3 heads. It's like a show of 3 acts, right? And the Iker of Attik is the Aiyn Sof itself. V'al Shem is Al Muso begimel Reishin. But because the Aiyn Sof itself conceals itself into 3 heads, Nikroim Gam Hagimel Reishim B'Shem Attik. So therefore these 3 heads are also called Attik. But it's not because that the Iker Inyan of Attik is those 3 heads. The Iker Inyan of Attik is the Aiyn Sof itself. It's just the Attik, the Aiyn Sof itself, can find itself, distribute itself somehow into 3 different heads, and therefore those 3 heads are also called by the name Attik.
What the heck is a head?
Is that at
But
that point
a head is like
forward
a
itself?
type of a keser, a level of keser is the head. To be,
These are 3 levels
Specific.
distinct from Ari.
yeah, this is all Attik, right? So in other words, what the Rabbi Chaim Vital says, this is a tremendous chiddush. I mean, it's just something you don't see every day. That Attik is really the Aiyn Sof. It refers to God Almighty. But what are you talking about? Don't we call Attik is usually called Keser, right? I mean, Keser is not God Almighty. Keser is, some realm of Sphira. And it's Penimius Keser, but still, Keser is the 11th Sphira. It's not the essence. There's something beyond Keser, right?
And
But here we're
that's
saying
one component.
that in fact, Attik is Atzmus. It's the Aiyn Sof. So then why do we call Keser Attik then? Because the Aiyn Sof distributes itself into 3 heads, right? And therefore those 3 heads also get the name of Hashem. They get the name called Attik.
Not Aiyn Sof. So Aiyn Sof is divisible.
No, it's not divisible. It's not divisible. It's not comprised of parts, but it can find itself. It actually says it conceals itself in three different places, right? So it conceals itself in the three heads of Attik, and therefore they're also called Attik. In other words, since the Aiyn Sof is called Attik, and the Aiyn Sof hides itself into these three heads, they're also called Attik. They're like called by the name of the Aiyn Sof, which is hiding inside of them. We'll understand more, but so far you're following what I'm saying? Okay, v'al pi zeh, accordingly, ikar atika, therefore the main atika, who Aiyn Sof shebechol gimel hareshim. Really, when we say atik, what we're referring to is the Aiyn Sof that's found inside of these three heads.
All three.
Yeah, because it's found in all three.
Are they different dargas?
Different dargas, but not different dargas of the Aiyn Sof,
Different dargas.
because the Aiyn Sof doesn't have different dargas.
Oh, right.
But the Aiyn Sof finds itself inside of different dargas of light.
So
Not the
it's
Aiyn Sof, but the Aiyn Sof within these components.
You know, you could have just simply, you could have inanimate, plant, and animal. But there's something inside of all three of them. Those are different levels. But you could have something, sort of one, that hides itself inside of all three different levels, right? Like the essence of God is found inside of a plant, believe it or not. It's also found inside of a human being.
So we're not
But
actually
so
talking
it
about that
hides
Aiyn Sof.
itself in three different levels. Something which can be distributed into the levels, that's already going into something which is divisible. But what we're saying is that the Attik is the Aiyn Sof, and it finds itself in three different heads. But the Ikar Inyan of Attik is the Aiyn Sof inside of those heads, not the different form which those heads are presenting. But when we say Attik, we mean the Aiyn Sof inside of those forms.
It's not the Aiyn Sof,
Yeah, the Aiyn Sof.
but a taste of the Aiyn Sof. on
No,
a
it's the
lower level.
Aiyn Sof mamish.
Forgot about the
Aiyn Sof does not have lower levels and higher levels.
Right.
It's
Or
just that it
components.
finds itself inside of lower and higher levels.
Is the
That
clear?
I
Is
can-
the
I don't
clear
know.
that distinguishes them?
Sure, the Kli is what makes different levels.
The tin series, actually.
Not of the Aiyn Sof, though. The Aiyn Sof cannot be contracted. It just
Right.
finds itself in different realms. Again, just like, it's very simple to understand. The godliness is equal in everything, right? Something doesn't have more of God in it than something else, in the essential level, because God's essence is everywhere, right? It's just that it finds itself in hiding at different levels of revelation in different places. But when we say Attik, we actually mean the Aiyn Sof, right? And therefore there's different levels called Attik, Panimius Attik, Chetzonius Attik, etc. But when we say Attik, we actually are not talking about so much the Sphira, but the Aiyn Sof which is found inside of it.
So Aiyn Sof within Aiyn Sof, if you skip the level of the Attik, right?
I don't know at all what that
Attik.
means.
Wait.
So it's a
You have the
deep.
three components in the Aiyn Sof, and they're
No,
called.
the Aiyn Sof is in three components. It comes down and finds itself hidden in different ways in three different components.
Still within Aiyn Sof.
In Attik.
Attik.
Like the Aiyn Sof is Aiyn Sof totally, but
So you have Attik in Aiyn Sof, and you have Aiyn Sof in
Attik is Aiyn Sof. That's what we're saying. That's what he says here.
What?
Attik, Iker Atika u Aiyn Sof, right? He says that a couple times. Iker Atika hu a Aiyn Sof. When we say Attik, it means the Aiyn Sof. But the fact that this gets concealed into three different heads, therefore those heads also get called Attik. They're not called Attik because of like their form or whatever unique sort of shape they have or level they have. They're called Attik because of the Aiyn Sof which is hiding inside of them. And therefore, when we say Atika, we really mean the Aiyn Sof that's inside of these different levels of the Kesser. Not that, so to speak, light that the Aiyn Sof is hiding inside of. The Attik part is the actual essence part. But in our mimer of the Rebbe Rashab is based on Mivar she'ikra in the Attik hu Aiyn Sof sheberadla. So what the Rebbe Rashab says is slightly different from what Rabbi Chaim Vital says. Not too different, so he doesn't contradict. The Rabbi Chaim Vital says that whenever you say Attik, you're talking about the Aiyn Sof inside of the different heads. But the Rebbe Rashab says the Iker Inyan of Attik is really the Aiyn Sof in the highest of heads. The Reisha de lo Isyada, the number one head, the unknowable head. Right? That's really the etzem name of Attik. It's true that lower levels of Attik are called Attik because the Aiyn Sof that's inside of them as well. But the Iker Inyan, what's properly called Attik, is the Aiyn Sof that's inside of the unknowable head, the highest of the three heads.
Are 2 and 3 on the same level?
Clearly not. 2, 3. But they're on the same level compared to, in other words, in a certain sense, they're both not the first level. We're out of time. It's not exactly the easiest place to stop, but we'll pick it up tomorrow.
I'll see you in a month.
Crazy, Rabbi. Ooh, mikvah. Thanks, Rabbi.
Shkoyach.
Heavy stuff there.
What's that?
Heavy stuff.
Tough place to stop right there. We'll reiterate that tomorrow. Try and think about that.
Attik is 3, not crowns, 3.
It is 3 crowns.
3 crowns.
Yeah.
Within Aiyn Sof.
You say within
It's
Aiyn
all the
Sof.
same.
We can go second.
No, I mean it's not.
It's like
Yeah.
a drop of water in the
There's
ocean.
a guy who takes care of memberships.
Put it like this: it's not the same, right? Crowns are levels of Kesser, right? There's 3 levels of the 3 heads are 3 levels of Kesser.
Probably be around in the
Okay,
afternoon.
which are not Aiyn
In the
Sof.
morning is hard for us to be like, I know you guys staying here.